Hi, I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Inner Edison. What I think you take away from today's show is our greatest growth comes from our greatest failures. Today's guest is Zander Fryer. Let's welcome him and get to know his story. Zander, thanks for showing up today.
Ed, thanks for having me, man.
It's a privilege. I would just want to say one thing. What a lot of people don't know is when we do these podcasts, you set appointments with people, and sometimes they just don't show up, which is shocking, that people set these appointments. I guess it's like the real world. And I tell everybody who does podcasts that give them 5 minutes. If they're not in there in 5 minutes, they don't respect your time, move on. So
yeah,
I'm off my soapbox now.
Oh, it's funny. I love that you brought that up. It's actually one of the, I learned that lesson early on in my career at Cisco. I had one of the accounts that I worked on was the Disney account. I had a meeting with the Disney CIO and I was 26 at the time. And I showed up to a minute about 2 minutes late. And I got in there, and when you live in LA, that's kind of a normal thing, right? There's traffic, there's all this stuff. And I got in, I apologized for being 2 minutes late. She goes, "Of course, no worries. Just want to be clear. You think your time's more valuable than mine is." And I was like, "Oh, crap. Like, I learned that lesson real quickly."
Well, you're lucky she stayed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now for, prior military men, on time is 10 to 15 minutes early. So,
Yep.
Yeah. So don't, and so when you're late, it's just like, you don't care. I understand if something happens. Well, that's fine. Let's just reschedule. We can do that. No big deal. But enough about my issues. Who is Zander? A lot of my listeners are not going to know who you are. And I forgot to tell you, this is video also. So it will be on YouTube when we release it. So
Fair enough.
You should have done your hair.
Glad I put my makeup on. Glad I got my beauty rest. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, luckily I shaved today, which is unusual. At least once every couple of weeks.
I was gonna say, man, you look good. I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I looked like you earlier. So.
Awesome.
But you have way more hair than I do anymore. So let's just move on. I had a lot of hair when I was in my 20s, but it went away once I hit my 30s.
Gotta have something.
Yeah. Who is Zander?
So Zander Fryer, I run a company called High Impact Coaching. We help coaches build businesses. So now,
sorry, I should have said, who was Zander Fryer?
That's a great question. Yeah, you're right. I didn't start here. This is not where I started out. So going back to who was Zander Fryer, it's interesting because when I was.
Let me just interrupt, because I'm sure you didn't walk into life after whatever and go, I want to be a coach.
No.
Yeah. So
I started, I kind of started my, career very similar to a lot of people did when, I followed what everybody else was doing. I was, when I was in high school, I was really good at math and sciences. So, that question, like, what are you going to do with your life, was pretty straightforward. It's, I'm going to be an engineer. Right. So I got accepted to UCLA for electrical engineering. And it was while I was at UCLA that I actually had my first run-in with what I refer to as real purpose and real passion. I actually joined Air Force ROTC to pay for my college degree because I didn't come from a very well-off family. So I joined Air Force ROTC and really fell in love with mentoring others, leading others, and supporting others in their own growth. And I was actually going to be leader in the military. I was actually on track to get my pilot slot. My goal was to fly F-22s. My senior year, I actually got a DUI and I was kicked out of the Air Force. So it was right around, 2009, 2010. So we were going through force shaping. So even though I had this stellar record, I had the Top Gun Award from field training. I had, character recommendations from a one-star general. It didn't matter. So I got kicked out of the Air Force, and with 22-year-old kid, 22-year-old lost kid, I did what everybody else that's 22 and lost did. I took my engineering degree and I went and joined the corporate world. So I went and worked for Cisco Systems for about 5 years. And I made great money there. I was making, by the time I left, I was making about $250,000. I was covering, like we talked about, covering companies like Facebook, NBC, Disney, Sony, Comcast, you name it. So I was driving a BMW, living in Venice Beach. I had what everybody told me was success, but I didn't really feel successful. And I had a mentor of mine at this point. I was a big self-development fan, and I had a mentor of mine ask me, Zander, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And it kind of went back to what I was going through in Air Force ROTC. I wanted to lead and mentor people. So literally after that conversation, 2 days later, I handed in my resignation at work. So no idea what I was doing, no idea what direction I was going. I just knew that I needed to, the one thing that I knew was, the one resource we can never get back is our time, right? And so, whatever it would cost me, whatever amount of energy I was going to go through to figure out how to become a coach, I was going to do it. So I ended up, spending, and everybody thinks, Zander, you were making a ton of money. So you probably just had stockpiles of cash in your savings somewhere.
I'm sorry, you were living in Venice Beach. Little do you know, I'm in Northern California, but I used to live in San Diego and LA, so I know exactly why you didn't have a ton of money.
Oh yeah, and not only that, I'm a millennial, right? Like, you really think millennials save money? That's adorable. So, by the time I quit, I had about 3 months of living expenses saved up, and I spent every penny of it in the first 30 days on different mentors and coaches and programs. And then I racked up about $25,000 worth of debt, maxing out 2 credit cards, just to learn everything that I felt I needed to learn to start a coaching business. Now, the great part was, because I was so focused on turning this business up and I was willing to invest and willing to take risks, I ended up with a 6-figure coaching business in about 3 months, and ended up having my first six figure month within about 12 months as a life coach. Most people think, like, cliche, millennial quits job, starts life coaching business. I think the only difference was I actually knew how to turn it into a business and actually make money doing it. So that was the start of high impact coaching. Now we're about 5 years later. We've helped over 800 coaches build successful 6-figure, multiple 6-figure, and 7-figure coaching businesses since then. So we're trying to change the world by helping a lot of servant leaders get out there and serve more people.
All right. So this podcast is about, for business people, and then, twice a month they tell their story, and then the other 2 is about how can you help them so they don't go through the great drops. Now, during this period of time I'm growing that you were talking about your business, I'm sure it was like straight up, right? No issues.
Oh yeah, perfect line. Just nothing.
20% more, 50%, 100%, doubling
every time. Every month was just more than the last one. Yeah, it was perfect.
All right. So looking back, what would you have done differently, or how could you? There's got to be, because you sold a great story. Please don't take this wrong.
Yeah.
About how great and went forward and what you did. Most people would think, wow, he had no issues. He made a lot of money. He did this. He had this. He had no issues. Let's talk about some of the issues, and we'll talk about how you can help people go through this so they don't have the issues.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I think you the first question you asked was like, what would you go back and change? And to be honest, I don't think I'd change anything. Right. And I think this is a really hard thing. This has always been a really hard thing for me to understand. And I heard it once when I was younger, and I've spent my entire life attempting to accept it. But everything happens for you, not to you. Right. And I've had some really tough times in my business. Before we got on this podcast, before we started recording, I was talking about my best friend who committed suicide about 6 months into the business. Right. So at this point, I had my first, I think, 30K month as a coach. And here I am, a coach that has helped. At that point, I have now helped people going through PTSD. I've helped people who've been suffering with depression, anxiety, suicidal tendencies. And my best friend commits suicide. He was a veteran in the Marines. He suffered from PTSD and addictive tendencies for about 10 to 12 years. And I couldn't stop him. I couldn't save him. And I look back at that, and this sounds really, really weird to a lot of people when I say this, but that was a moment that I don't know. Obviously, I wish I could change it, but I don't know if I actually would. Because the person I am today, the lives that I've been able to change today, is because of what I've been through in my past. Because of going through that and losing my best friend, I suffered from depression for probably 6 to 9 months. I didn't want to get out of bed. I struggled every day to put in the work, but I had to learn. I had to learn how to overcome depression. I had to learn how to overcome the loss, the grief, the heartache, resenting your best friend for committing suicide. Like, that's terrifying. You resent him for committing suicide, then you feel guilty for resenting him, then you feel shameful for being a coach and feeling guilty and resenting. And you have all of these negative emotions. And if you don't learn how to move through them, you're never going to be able to help other people do it too. And so for me, I had to go through that to be able to do what I do today. So, was it daisies and rainbows? Absolutely not. It was months of darkness and crawling through the mud. But, without that, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I for sure would not have the business that I have today.
Right. And you got to remember, being a vet, vets don't ask for help.
Yeah.
They don't. I don't care how bad it is.
Yeah.
And when that's the first
hardest thing to do when you need help is to ask for it.
Well, it's even worse for veterans because they think that they're strong and they don't have to do this. But one of the issues that I always tell people, especially because we do a Helping the Brave podcast, is you know, if you're in a firefight, you ask for support, right? You call on the radio, you want air support, right? What the heck's the difference?
Yeah.
Right. And if you tell somebody that, they go, oh yeah, we did, didn't we? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was in the Navy, so you would, you know, you call the ships and have them hit, shoot those things over there. Even though I was a corpsman and only stationed at Camp Pendleton, you know, I understand what people do. So
absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, PTSD is huge, and I mean, it doesn't have to be a military PTSD. It could be other stuff. It could be, you know, a lot of other issues that cause that for people.
Yeah, and that's we talk about that with a lot of people. Everybody has been through some form of trauma, whether you know it or not. Right. You know, obviously going through a war situation, you're in a life or death situation, but there's a lot of stuff that happens to you when you're young, when you're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old that might not seem like a life or death situation now. But when you look at it through the eyes of a 4-year-old, it can very much seem like a life or death situation. And it creates traumatic programming in the brain that, you know, most of us just kind of bury down and forget about.
Right. Do you need to do something there?
Can I do something? Oh,
did you want to take a drink or something? Go ahead.
Is that okay? Is that proper?
Of course. It's a podcast. Even if it was radio, we do whatever we want. We just don't cuss on radio. So what's your who's your perfect client right now?
Right now we're working with coaches. So starting coaches, anybody who's, you know, they're passionate about health and wellness or life coaching or career coaching, fitness. You know, we work with a lot of coaches right now because most of them don't realize, you know, there's two sides to building a coaching business. And what we've seen, I think it was Huffington Post recently did an article on it. About 90% of online coaches specifically will give up within the first 4 to 6 months. 90% will give up in the first 4 to 6 months. Now, when I think of coaches, I think of people that are setting out to help. They're setting out to serve others. Their heart is in the right place. But 90% of them will give up in less than half of a year. And the reason for that is because they forget to have a good coaching business. There's 2 areas of expertise you have to have. There's coaching expertise and there's business expertise. And most coaches have the coaching expertise, but they never learn the business expertise. And because of that, they never get off the ground. They never make the money they need to. They have to stay in 9 to 5s, and they're never able to help the people that they really need to help because they're just doing it as more of a hobby. So we're really, really focused on helping those starting coaches get off the ground, get up and running, and be able to do it full time.
No, it's amazing. But you didn't start with coaches, did you? Did you start?
No. So yeah, like I mentioned, I started as just a generic life coach. You know, was able to build that, and basically the difference was when I started building my life coaching business, had a lot of other coaches that I'd been networking with that were like, "You've been doing it in about 3 to 5 months, what took me 5 years, like, and I still haven't done it. Like, give me some tips." So I worked with a handful of coaches at first to see like, hey, I've never done this before. Let's see if what I did would work for you. You know, gave them the recipe. They got great results and they started to tell more people about it. And we kind of, you know, produced the system from that.
I mean, it had to be hard. Please don't take this wrong. That with your age, right? That people like this guy's a life coach. What's he going to teach me? He hasn't even started his life, right? Yeah,
it's funny. I had this same conversation with Dave Meltzer last week, actually. So you know, Dave's one of the best business coaches in the world. I've looked up to that man for a while. And one of the things that he said, he's like, here's the truth. You could have somebody who's got, you know, 30, 40, 50 years experience in business, but they're not a great business coach. And he was like, why is that? And I basically told him, I said, well, there's a lot of people out there that never actually learn from their mistakes, right? You can go repeat the same things over and over again, right? Without actually learning, changing, and adapting. And so you could be 60, you could be 70, you could be 80. But if you keep repeating the same habits, the same decisions, the same processes throughout your life, you're actually not growing any wiser. You're not actually getting any better, and you don't have any sheer wisdom to give to people. The thing that I always tell people is, you know, I look young, but I've broken a lot of shit up to this point. I'm not afraid to admit it. I've messed up a lot of things. I've been a lot of places. I've broken businesses. I like we were talking about, when we talk about my business at this point being a multi-7-figure coaching business, it didn't just go straight up, right? It went up, then it crashed. Then it went up again, then it crashed. Then it went up again. Right. And through all of this, you'll learn a lot of things. And if you're paying attention to it, you have the courage to go review and reflect why things went they did. Look deep on yourself and figure out, like, we were just talking about how you had a mindset coach on recently that, like, clearly was having some mindset issues, right? She's not paying attention to her own coaching.
That was said in like privacy. You're not supposed to repeat that.
Too late. I'm sorry, man.
This bad, buddy.
But yeah, so, the whole idea there is, like, if you're not taking your own coaching, if you're not growing, you're not going to have the wisdom that you need to give to people. So, in the end, it just comes down to results. Whether you're a 19-year-old kid or you're a 60-year-old, doesn't really matter as long as you get results with people.
Right. And things are different these days. Like when I was younger, I mean, I remember when I was younger, I was like, I need to put gray in my hair because no one's taking me seriously. So
people will trust me. Yeah.
Yeah. No one's taking me seriously in my 20s.
It's interesting now because people, I get a lot of people that join our programs that are 10, 20 years older than I am. And they specifically join because they see somebody younger doing some amazing stuff. And they're like, clearly you figured something out that me and my generation haven't. And I want to see what that is.
Right. And I can see that, but I mean, all right. So we've had all this nice stuff. Okay. You said I went up and then I crashed. What was the first crash? What did you learn?
The first crash was when my best friend committed suicide.
Okay.
The first crash.
So basically that was an emotional crash that took 100%. You out of your business. All right. So when you came back out, you overcame that, I assume, with time and talking to people.
Yeah. So we, one of the things that we do with a lot of our clients is we take people through what's referred to as psychosomatic work. So talking to people is kind of
lame person. Psychosomatic means.
So basically, what it means. Do you know what % of your brain is your subconscious mind?
80%.
It's about 95 to 97%. So
I just failed that test. I'll write that down for the next time.
Majority of your brain is actually like a computer program that's been programmed by society, been programmed by really emotional situations. So talk therapy, one of the things that talk therapy and just talking about things can actually do is it can actually exacerbate the programming. So the way that you program your subconscious is, number one, through repetition, and number two, through deep emotional charge. Right. And so if you think about a traumatic experience, a life or death situation, there's a deep emotional charge. Whenever I ask someone, where were you when you found out about 9/11? Almost anybody can detail exactly where they were, what they were doing, how they found out in a lot of detail because it was so emotionally charged. Right. So this creates a subconscious programming. Now, what psychosomatic work does, psycho meaning brain, somatic meaning body. And what it is, this is the connection between the conscious and the unconscious brain. There's forms of psychotherapy where you can actually go in and unprogram the past emotional programming. And what talk therapy actually does, talk therapy can actually reprogram it because you're talking through the emotions, and it can actually strengthen the neuroprogramming and it can actually make it worse sometimes. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to go in and release the emotional charge so that it no longer holds bearing on the subconscious mind. Now, I specialize in this type of mental work, and I had a mentor of mine that basically worked through it with me for about 6 months. And working through that and doing a handful of other techniques that we work through with clients to help them go through the grieving process, go through any form of loss or trauma, where I was able to release a lot of the emotional baggage that came with it. But it's definitely, what I would suggest to people, anybody who's going through a tough time, look up psychosomatic work. There's things like Gestalt, GESTALT, regenerating imagery and memory. One of my mentors, Dr. Deb Sandella, she founded the RIM Institute. Unfortunate name, but it gets the job done. So regenerating imagery and memory. These are processes that can actually help you release the emotional baggage rather than just talking through it.
Gotcha. I mean, because a lot of people need that. I mean, because you asked, where were you at 9/11? I remember seeing it on TV, and I was in Oceanside down in San Diego. And then my biggest thing is when my dad died when I was 12, hairy cell leukemia, I was over at a friend's house, and this is going to date me, but the album for AC/DC just came out, Hell's Bells, and we were listening to it on a record. That's how old I am. Right. not that old, but that's it. Just vinyl was I don't care where you are.
Yep.
Vinyl is the king. I don't care.
Still the best. Still the best.
So
I'm a
remember
millennial and I know that, man.
Yeah, I remember it totally. And then I went home for it, So I knew he was dying of cancer for a very long time, but he finally went. So, yeah. And that's the things you remember certain things, just like music, right? Certain music can hit something and you're like, holy cow. And for me, emotionally, right, it didn't affect me then. It affected me years later when I was watching TV and I just had my son. And then, the son calls home to talk to dad and tell him something. And it's like, oh shit, I don't have that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. There's and that's, that's bringing back that emotional trauma. And every time that happens, and that still happens to me, right? We're never going to fully release the trauma. We're never going to fully release the emotion. But if we can release enough of it to the point where we can continue to act, purposefully moving forward, that's the real goal. I'll still be listening to random songs and something will hit me and all of a sudden I'll burst into tears. And I'm like, where the hell did that come from? But it's because that subconscious programming, that 95% is so powerful when it comes to affecting our daily life.
I'm glad I wore the shirt I wore today talking about 9/11.
Yeah.
Never forget. Sorry.
Yeah.
It was red, worked out. It's not breast cancer month yet. So, all right. So I want to get over. Okay. So that was the first one. What was
the first one?
Right. And so that was an outside thing one of the things that we have to realize is when we have a business, there's a lot of stuff on the outside that we have no control over that what could destroy your business. And I'm just going to talk political right now. So based on the mortgage industry, the two things that are going to affect our business more than anything else is the current administration and the Fed, right?
Yep.
Nothing else. I don't care where it is. And right now, both of those people are really doing their best to mess with it and move on. Right. And so you have to understand that there's certain things you can't control. Right. And so you have to put things in place. If this happens, what do you do here and here? I mean, for us right now, luckily, we're so short on homes. I mean, millions and millions of homes that it doesn't matter how much they mess it up. It still will keep us going forward. But
you can't right now in that industry. You can't turn enough knobs to write this with the shortage that's going on.
Oh, there's nothing we can do. I mean, it's worse because I mean, if you look at your generation, you go back 30 some years, you guys are about, 31. I don't know how old you are, but 31 to 33 years. If you go back, the amount of birth rates that is increasing, we're in like the third year of a 10-year increase. And so it's horrible.
I didn't know that. I'm 33, by the way. So I'm like, I'm right at that. Yeah.
That is usually when you first start making your family units and buying your first house, whatever. Some people do it earlier, but on average, I say 31 to 33, even though they say 33. And let me get off since I brought that up if you're curious, but I had to go to a documentary 2 weekends, not last Sunday, the Sunday before, down in Huntington Beach about this. And basically I told them about if you go back to the downturn in 2006, right, that huge drop that we did, that was because if you go back 30 to 33 years, there was Roe versus Wade that came in. And that actually caused the decrease in birth rates, right, for over a 10-year period. So when we're from 2002 to 2006-ish, 7, we're building all these homes for these people who are coming of age that aren't coming of age,
that don't exist.
Right. And so what happened is we had all these horrible loan programs where people could buy 2 and 3 homes and track homes. They were buying 2 and 3 homes in a housing track. Right. So they're like, we need to keep building houses. And that's why we overbuilt for the amount of houses we have. So when you look at that and today, we're messed up for years. You're not going to, if you don't own a home, you need to own a home now.
And if you own a home, probably buy another.
Well, if you own a home, you're never going to sell it. You're never going to move because the rates are so low that's right now, 85% of the market is a resale market. I say going forward in 10 years from now, it's probably going to be 45% as resale.
Wow.
Right. Because why would somebody want to sell the house at a 2% interest rate for a 4% interest rate? Even if it's the same home, your payment's going up $1,100. Yeah. Anyway, enough about me. This is about you. All right.
Do I need to pay you for this? This was some good advice that I'm taking for my real estate investment stuff I'm doing now.
Yeah, just keep doing it. Don't give it up. That's why I do the real estate. I do a radio show called Real Estate Jerky. We give you something to chew on.
Awesome.
And it turns into a podcast and I do lives. I do everything about that kind of stuff because it's important to know this, where most people think it's going to bust. It's going to burst. Run, sell everything. Do not sell everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't listen. Don't listen to those people. Research it yourself. All this stuff can be found. Nobody is talking about that whole thing about birth rates and everything else going forward. So
I love it.
Yeah. Anyway, second. All right. So we were talking about things outside of your business.
Second bust. Yeah.
Yeah.
So second bust definitely would have been more internal. This was me hitting a plateau. I think it was more of my internal plateau. At this point, I had, I'd built a 7-figure business with my coaching company, and I was trying to scale it to multiple 7 figures and go to the next point. And really, I started to hit my own limitations as a leader. I started to hit my own limitations as a manager, as a business leader, as a CEO. Because at that point, when I first started my business, I was able to scale it mostly through sheer will of the entrepreneur, meaning me. I had one ops guy, and eventually, a couple of admins to kind of help me out with it and get it to that point. But if I wanted to scale any further, I had to actually build a team. And this is where, I learned a lot by making a lot of mistakes. So at one point I had hired on, I think it was like 5 new team members over the course of 3 or 4 months, and ended up losing 4 of the 5. And then, 6 months later had brought on another 5 people and ended up losing all 5 of the 5. And, really it was my own growth as a leader. Now I'd gotten leadership training in Air Force ROTC, but that was all theoretical, right? That was all best guess advice. And it's, and this, but it's totally different when you get into the real world, and, whether you're in the military and you're having bullets flying by, or you're a desk jockey or a CEO.
It's not the same thing, man. And I was smiling because I know where you're going. So it wasn't about what happened to you.
Yep.
So.
But I had never really learned what it meant to be a real world leader and actually get in there and go through the stuff. So that process took me about 18 months of building up a team and, losing the team. And it wasn't because I didn't have great people. It was because I didn't put my people in a position to win. Right. It was 100% my fault. I just didn't have the skills. I didn't have the resources, the systems to make sure that they were set up to actually succeed. And it took me 2 rounds of basically building and blowing up my team to realize what was going on before, I got help, I got mentorship, to really focusing on, okay, what do I need to do to make this successful? What do I need to do to get to the $5 million mark, the $10 million mark, and who has been there so I can actually go learn from them on how to make it happen.
Right. I mean, because for myself, right, I have multiple teams and I've been through it multiple times, different companies, growing companies. And as a, somebody who produces and somebody who is the founder of a company, you're usually the worst person to hire people, right?
Yeah.
You are, because you expect people to think like you, do like you, and
everybody to have the entrepreneurial brain.
Yeah. Or what's worse for military people, prior military, we have a total different look at things, right? It's attention to detail. You're here on time, which means early, this, and this, and you find out they don't have any of those, right?
Yeah.
So you try to find vets, and it's hard because then you're dealing with other things. I mean, I would love hiring vets. I love hiring the people who I have, but it takes a long time to find the right people.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell people, get somebody else, get a service to help you find what you're looking for. Don't do it yourself, because it's very difficult for you, because you want to help people, and sometimes that's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned, and you kind of touched on this, is I don't want a team of Zanders.
No.
Right. But
nothing gets done.
That's what, because I'm looking for people that I like and that I align with. Right. If I actually built my team, it would be a team of Zanders, and they would all argue and none of them would get any shit done properly. It's like, I need people who enjoy doing the other stuff. And that's actually their zone of genius, which, to your point, it's like, if I'm the one hiring, I'm never going to connect with that person. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned that multiple times. I'm the worst at doing certain things. Right. I mean, I do only what I like doing, because if I do everything else, I even tell my clients, I'm sorry, that's not my wheelhouse. Let me get so-and-so to talk to you.
Let me get somebody who can actually handle that. Yeah.
Yeah, I could, but I'd mess it up just because I don't do it all the time. I'm being honest. I mean, I was telling somebody, there's this little Mexican food place there, has a drive-through, right? And if I go through there, occasionally I go through there, and if the owner's in the window, I'll back out and go, because he messes up my order all the time, right? Because he wants to be telling me everything and everything. That's what blah blah blah. I've only been here 500 times. I know what it is. I'm a direct person, so this is my order. I say exactly what I want. and then he doesn't listen to it. And so it's the same thing in any business. Get out of your way.
Yeah. Stay in your lane.
That's right. Do what you love. And if you're not good at it, get out of it. The thing that I'm good at is helping people tell their stories across multiple mediums. So, and that's what I try to stick with. So I hire everybody else to do everything else. And I'm not perfect at that. And you don't get it right the first time. And even if you get it right, like we just went through a year of we've done more transaction in the last year, like 2020, than we normally do in 10, maybe 15 years. It was so much volume. Wow. It was ridiculous. I have processors who quit afterwards because they were so burnt out because of all the work. And they're like, this is not what I want to do anymore. I want to go work with kids. I'm like, how bad is this industry that you want to go work with kids? Right. I'm saying, I don't know if you have kids, but I had 5 of them. That is one thing I don't want to work with all day long. That is not happening.
You already have to do that at home. Yeah. Let's not do that in business.
Right. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is, and I can see it because people take jobs home with them. And so you have to do what you love, whatever that is. Right. Yeah. If that's not running a company, that's okay. And we were talking about, you wanted to scale your business to here, here, and here. Doesn't mean that you have to scale your business here, here, and here. You have to do what makes you happy and what is your definition of success, not somebody else's definition of success. What is yours? If that means you have enough money so you're home at this time with your kids and everything else while they grow up, that's great. That's your definition, and you should stick with that and don't look to other people to get. Well, I
think you're hitting on something that's really important here, that nobody really ever takes the time to get clear on that. Right. Nobody ever really takes the time to be like, hey, what actually is my definition of success? What does that actually look like for me? Because there are a lot of people that, they try and scale their business too big and they only realize, well, actually, this is what I wanted. Or a lot of people that kind of stop because they think they're good, but they actually do want more. And I think if people just actually spent a little bit of time actively like pursuing that, my book that is coming out next month is called Shit You Don't Learn in College. And this is one of the things that like we talk about is like most people are forced into the jobs and the careers and the outcomes that they want based on what other people are telling them is normal or what success is, rather than, going back and like it's the famous Socrates quote, right? Know thyself. Well, if you don't know thyself, how are you ever going to be happy if you don't know what happy and successful is for you?
Right. And that means in business and personal.
Yeah. It's all life.
Well, right? No, I'm just saying most people don't even know themselves when they're in a relationship, what they want from the other person or who that is. And I'm going to say this. So basically I've been divorced twice. So finally I said, enough is enough. So I made a list of what I wanted in another person. Everything I wanted, not wanted. Right.
Yeah.
And people were like, you're crazy. You're never going to get that. Well, I found my wife. She had a list also because she went through a divorce and she's like, okay. And everybody told her she would never get it. And this is how important this is. I tell everybody, the only thing I wasn't on her list was a fireman because she thought she wanted me gone every other night so she could have time to herself. Right. You don't realize when you find your soulmate, you guys do everything together.
You don't want to leave them. Yeah.
Right. The only thing she wasn't on my list was 5'9". She's 5'4". I can deal with that. All right.
Can I tell you something?
What?
I had a list. And my current wife had a list, and we both matched everything but one thing on our list as well.
Yeah. So, and that's okay.
Yeah, but I think that's amazing though, because just like you mentioned, like my wife is originally from Australia. We met each other 9,000 miles apart. We dated long distance, 9,000 miles apart, because I had a 1-page list, and the only thing that she's not on my list is blonde. And on her list, she had a 4-page list.
Wow.
It was detailed. And the only thing, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I'm pretty sure it was a height thing for me. Like I'm 1 inch too short or something like that. It was pretty funny, but same exact thing. But because we were so clear on what we wanted, right, we dated long distance for 10 months before figuring out how to get her, be able to fly out to the US and move to the US. And, before we were able to get married. Now we've been married for 2 years. I swear to everybody, every week, every month, I swear I fall more and more in love with that woman. Yeah. And it's because I have found my soulmate.
Right. And you have to have the list. I don't care. Because if you don't, you repeat, you get in relationships that go nowhere and you start all over again. It's huge. I mean, I tell everybody, but only the people who are successful at it actually have a list. Right.
Yeah.
And you should have the same thing for your company. What do you want from your company? Where you want it? But the list for a partner is really important, and you have to do it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more.
Right. And I was going so I had a lot for a minute there while you were talking. I'm like, I want to bring up this one thing. And I was like, I lost my train of thought. All right. So for us, someone set us up on a blind date. This is before we knew we had a list. Right?
Yeah.
Blind date went nowhere. It was the worst blind date I've ever been on.
This is with your wife.
Yeah. Well, this is before. So,
okay.
So when you normally date, you don't say who you are and what you are, all that kind of stuff. Like you were on a long distance. So you guys talked on the phone a lot. And you said everything because you really didn't know if it was going to work. So you're so far away, it didn't matter, I assume. But for us, basically, we met.
A little more to it, but yeah,
it didn't work. So we spun out. She spun out faster than I could at the end of the night. And basically, something happened, and then we started talking because I needed her help on something. And she was like, basically, long story. I have a daughter with special needs. My second wife, who had that, she got into drugs. I got my daughter full time, and when I got her, she had nothing. I just had her car seat and the set of clothes. So friend of ours who told her that set us up on the blind date goes, did you hear what happened to Ed? Blah, blah, blah. Next I know there's this bag on my doorstep of all these girl clothes from all the women that are connected because they had, girls, and they sent them to me. In there was a note from my wife saying, I know what you're going through. If you have any questions, just give me a call, call, we can talk. So we talked. And you said stuff you didn't care about because we already been on a blind date.
Because you didn't think anything was going to come from it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, because for most people, they don't tell them who the other person really is until you're into the relationship 6 months and you're like, that's not the same person. Yeah. We didn't care because we went through it. So for us, it just worked out. And then we were friends and we felt, then it happened. And that's what I tell people. You can't go into it not telling who you are. You have to be okay for them to know who you are so that they can be okay with that. So. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, it basically the similar side of that for me and my wife is, so we actually originally met over a Facebook Live is actually how I opened up this conversation. I did a Facebook Live in one of my Facebook groups with about 2,500 people titled Help Me Find Love. So in case you guys and all the single guys out there, in case you're wondering how to find a future wife, you just need to go do a Facebook Live and tell everybody you're looking for a wife. But basically, it ended up getting me on a bunch of, set up with a bunch of people on a bunch of dates. And I had this cute Australian woman in my group reach out, and she basically just said, hey, I don't know if anything could come from this, but we live on the other side of the world, but I'd love to just meet you and get to know you. And so we did a video call, really hit it off, set up a second video call. And the way that she tells it, I stood her up. I'll never admit that, but
it's true though.
It's true.
If your wife says it happened.
True.
Happy wife, happy life. You gotta learn that. It's 2 years into it.
Yeah. So I royally messed it up, and she reached back out to me and she goes, look, nothing's going to ever come from this unless we meet in person. And I'm flying. Her dad lived in Dubai. She lived in Brisbane at the time. And she goes, I'm flying to Dubai for the holidays. If I stop by in San Diego, because San Diego and Dubai are right next to each other, if I stop by in San Diego, would you want to meet up? And of course, I'm like, yes, of course. So she stops by in San Diego. We had about 3 days, and it was because we were in such a forced short time zone. I talked about things with that woman that I had never told anybody in my entire life over the course of those 3 days. We shared our lists together, and by the end of it, we knew each other so well because, like you mentioned, we weren't trying to date because we couldn't date. You can't date long term. So at that point, it was literally a 3-day trial of whether or not you want to spend the rest of your life with this person. Because if you're going to date 9,000 miles apart, you better be pretty committed to making it work.
And like she moved to the US for you, right?
Yeah. Yep.
No, going to Australia?
I would love to, but maybe not right now. It's an interesting place right now.
Yeah. Well, it's always been an interesting place.
That's for sure. It's always been an interesting place. No,
we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, we would love to be, we're in the US right now. At some point we're going to live in Australia. At some point we'll probably live in Costa Rica or somewhere else too. We're big traveling people, and we don't necessarily see ourselves being stuck to any one place.
Have you guys did the Camino de Santiago yet?
No, what's that?
Oh, you don't know about the way?
No.
So walk in Spain, you start in France, and you walk all the way through France into Spain down to the Camino de Santiago Cathedral. It's an old, basically it used to be a pilgrimage. I guess it still is, but there's multiple routes you can do to Santiago. So you're talking about wives and what they get us to do. Basically, she would sit on the couch and smile at me. Hey, would you do a 5K with me? A 10K? Would you do a half iron? Would you do a triathlon with me? She's originally from Hawaii. So she only knew about the big Ironman. She didn't know there was sprints and
there was smaller ones.
Yeah. And she's like, would you do that with me? And I'm like, okay. So we did all that. And then finally she's like, and so I do all this stuff. Even I became a life coach years ago because she was like, I want to go to this. Will you go with me? Sure. What will it do? It won't hurt. So anyway, she asked me to do this walk. I was like, what the heck is this? So I watched the movie called The Way. And see, remember that on Netflix or somewhere, The Way. It's with Emil Estevez and his dad, Martin, whatever his name is. Can't think of his name, but Charlie Sheen, Martin Sheen or whatever. Martin Sheen. Anyway, basically it's that movie and it's an amazing movie. And so we did it. We couldn't do the whole thing because it takes you 30 to 40 days to do the whole thing. And we work. So we had 3 weeks. So we did 200 miles of it walking, so many per day. So it's just, you're saying you do a lot of traveling. So do we, but it's, we do things together and a lot of couples don't do things together. And we only spend time with couples who like each other.
Yeah.
Right? That's important for us.
I was going to say, that's kind of important. Yeah.
I don't want to be around people who argue and hate each other because then what does it help? It doesn't help us.
Yeah. It's just going to rub off on your relationship.
It won't, but we'll just not hang out with them. That's how we work. Anyway, so, she had 3 kids. I adopted her 3 kids. They're all out of the house. Thank God. You haven't started, I assume.
No, we're getting in there in the next year or so. So I'll let you know in a couple of years how it's going.
Appreciate that. Anything else you want to add today? Because we've went from businesses to relationships, how important this stuff is. I mean, to me, it's all connected because a lot of people have either a really good business life and a horrible personal life, or they have a good personal life and a horrible business life. There's not a lot of people who have both. So for me, success is having both and having enough money to do what I want. Right. And having that's for me, that's my success. It doesn't matter if I'm doing, 400 or 1,000 loans a year. It's about how much time I have to do the other things.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for me, I love what we've been talking about just getting clarity too. Because I think, when we're talking about success in life, you're going to want success in life in all areas, in your health, in your relationships, in your business or career and financial situation, in your contribution back to society. We're talking about both of our, some of our big passions is helping veterans and prevent, suicide. That's 22 veterans committing suicide a day. It's insane. Yeah. So one of my big passions is helping. There's a company here in San Diego called Shelter to Soldier, and they take shelter dogs and they train them up to be psychiatric dogs for veterans. And every year we go there and contribute as much as we can. So getting clarity on, these different areas of your life and what you want to contribute there is going to really help you achieve those goals. I think the big thing for me that I want to add to that, and one of the things that I've learned is I have a big internal drive to accomplish a lot of things in this life. One of the things that I've been learning over the last several years is I'm going to work my ass off. I'm going to achieve a lot of things. I'm going to have a big impact. But if I'm not enjoying the process while I'm doing it, then I'm doing something wrong. And so for me, there's what I consider true success in life or true life mastery is accomplishing your true purpose, your true mission in life and in all of the different areas, but also being able to be present and appreciative and grateful and enjoy the process the whole time. And I think for me, that's the big thing that I'm constantly working on.
And I mean, I just want to add one more thing to that, what you just said. I mean, you have to also understand that every so many years, you have to reinvent yourself with what's going on around you and be okay with what happens, because you could have a perfect business right now and then something takes it out because it's something you have no control over. That's okay. You just have to learn how to rebuild and move on because things will happen and you can't let it control you to where you're so upset that it controls who you and what you do. And I think a lot of people I just built this. This is my baby. No. And I met a guy who's like, I don't get emotionally attached to my business anymore. I build them and sell them. I'm like, I can see that, but I enjoy building. I enjoy helping veterans through my, mortgages or helping them on the other stuff with our podcast and everything. Cause I am one, and I think that a lot of them got a raw deal till, up to a certain point, and we need to help them as much as possible. So it's as much as I can give back. That's where I like giving back. So,
yeah, I love that.
Zander, I really appreciate you being on the show today. Thank you.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me, Ed.
No, it's been a blast, actually. And I want to thank everybody else for being here and listening. And if you really enjoyed what we do here, please follow for more. And we'll talk to you next time.